This is my 5th video exploring this bad idea I had, maybe a great idea, to see if I could stain a polyurethane guitar finish with fabric dye. Fabric dye that is made for synthetics, including polyester, nylon, and acrylic. And believe it or not, I have found success. I have found a method that allows me to stain polyurethane if I sand it and then mix the dye with acetone and then paint it on. But I ran into some limitations. I did a bunch of tests and then I committed to painting the guitar, and there's things that I learned in doing that. There's places where the dye didn't set the same as other places. There's a blotchiness to it, and I think it has to do with pressure. It also has to do with how thoroughly it was sanded. And so in the last video, I painted the whole thing, as you can see. I did this kind of like octopus gone leopard spot sort of look here, which I really, really love the mock-ups that I did. There's something that didn't translate in doing it in real life, in person here on the actual guitar. And in the last video, I asked the audience, what do you think I should do? You think I should leave it and just run with it? Or you think I should sand it back down and just go for like a rat rod direction or something in between? And taking the temperature of the room, taking the temperature of the audience, it seemed like a lot of people agreed with my misgivings about how it turned out. I think the technique has a lot of promise to it. I think this recipe of synthetic dye and acetone and sanding has some very real creative promise. Just the execution isn't what I was looking for. But a comment that I got a lot is people asking what would happen if I layered. If I put more dye on top of what was already dyed, will it double it up? Will it make it richer? Will it fill in the little gaps and things like that that are bugging me? I don't think it's all just the gaps. I also think I didn't paint the spots exactly in the best looking way. I think this is an artistic failure, partially on my part. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to go for broke. I'm going to use the rest of the acetone dye mix that I've made, and I'm just gonna go all over. I'm gonna go all the way. I'm gonna saturate this thing, and we'll see what happens when it's doubled over, when colors are mixing, and then, unless it turns out rad, I'm gonna sand it all off. And then I'm gonna put the guitar together, and we'll have considered this lessons learned for future creative projects. So anyways, I've got my jars here. I've got some bigger paint brushes this time. A fun thing that I've learned, by the way, through this process is that painting with dyed acetone cleans your brushes. It leaves you with sparkling, clean paint brushes. I like that about this technique. So anyways, let's get into it. I can't wait to get started and ruin something that I intended to be beautiful and learn more things about the potential for the technique. Time-lapse music, here we go! What if this turns out amazing? I just end up leaving it. Well, there it is. This could actually end up looking kind of interesting. I remember when I wipe this all away, it's going to be faded underneath. But I'm interested to see if the ink doubles or if that acetone actually blended out some of the painting I already had put on there. I don't know. Experimenting is fun though, right? All right, I'll come back in a couple hours when it's all dried off and wipe it clean. Next day, I didn't mean to wait until the next day, but I decided to enjoy the rest of my weekend instead of rush back in here to see how things turned out and be pleasant for the camera. I wanted to be pleasant for my children. So there it is. It's all dried out. There's the back as it was. How do you think it's going to turn out? You think it's going to look good? I don't know. I'm feeling hopeful. Let's start taking this stuff off. A few people have suggested just leaving the dried acetone dye as it is. There's no acetone left. It's just the dye now. It's kind of a rough, almost crystally powder. And honestly, it's a bit dull in color after it dries. I don't think that's an effect that I'd want to go for. Someone could certainly do it if they wanted to. If you got colors that you like and you painted them on there and you wanted to lock it in with a clear coat, I bet it would work. I don't know. So anyways, rubbing alcohol time. Let's see what's underneath. See, even that rubbing alcohol. Maybe a clear coat would make it pop. I don't know. Because that rubbing alcohol made it pop for a moment. I think we're going to see a lot of blotchy brush strokes here. I was trying to use as much pressure as I could on the brushes. Yeah, I don't know. In 50 years, someone's going to buy this from the future equivalent of a pawn shop. And they're going to be like, what the heck happened to this guitar? Why is there all this pink dye in all the cavities? What were they doing? Maybe they'll have a podcast. Or a holocast, or... what would we call a podcast that happens in your mind? It gets beamed directly into your psyche. A Matrix cast? Maybe in 50 years they'll have a Matrix cast about mangled guitars. And they'll be talking about this one. Kind of don't hate where the blue is sitting right now. I'm pretty dang certain I'm going to be sanding this thing at the end of this video. But I'm happy to do another experiment, you know? But yeah, that blue's sitting in there nice and dark. I don't know what I was doing down here different than over here and over here, but that blue really soaked in. Interesting results. Not exactly what I'd call overwhelmingly positive results. There are areas that soaked up more color than before, but then areas that didn't. The pink did not stick as well as the blue. As far as doubling up the color, I mean, if we look in the spots, yeah, it's darker there than it is there. It's darker there than it is there. It's not darker there than it is there. I think as a general concept, yes, doubling up is darkening the finish. It's starting to feel like, unless you are absolutely sure that you got an even sand, that you really roughed up everything the same, that dye's just not going to be consistent. Maybe use of some stronger solvent would remedy that, but I don't know. There's also some really interesting areas where there's like speckling. I'll have to get some close-up photos of that. I think from the bits of solids that are in the dye, which I don't mind. I don't hate that. I kind of like the speckling. It's all very just like cross your fingers and pray. And I think that's part of the reason why the spots didn't work out quite right, is because I was trying to do something intentional, and this is more of like doing like a paint pour sort of thing, where like you get what happens and you either accept the results or you don't. It's kind of interesting that there's certain places where it seems like, even though I was using all sorts of extra pressure with the bigger brushes, like kind of really digging in, almost scraping with the brushes, and using a lot more of that acetone dye, there's places where it seems like it was way less effective than when I was using the little brush with very light pressure. What does it mean? Is pressure the enemy? I thought that pressure would be my friend, but maybe I was wrong about that. Maybe there's parts of this that I don't fully understand yet. Maybe it has to do with the sanding. I don't know, but like, you'd think that the areas right here would be at least as dark as some of the areas that didn't get doubled up. Or maybe these are just legitimately darker than they were before, and the doubling is... No, because it was way darker than a lot of this. How strange. Maybe I'll feel motivated to learn more about this process some other time. Maybe I'll have some other scrap body laying around that I can experiment on. But for the time being, I think this is it for me for this guitar. The next step is to go throw it on the workbench and start attacking it with sandpaper and just keep removing color until I feel happy about what I'm seeing, until I take it down to a rat rod sort of look. What is left to say about this, though? I think the only thing left to say is thank you. This is the 5th video in this journey, in this series. And I know one of them was me routing out the guitar and cutting pick guards and stuff like that, that whole journey. But it's always a gamble to make videos and publish them. You never know how this stuff is going to land. And I've been pleasantly surprised at how many people have shown up for this nonsense. I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. It's a weird thing to do, and people show up when you do weird things, right? And maybe that's the message. Maybe we need to be doing more weird things as guitar YouTubers. Less Tube Screamer demos and more of whatever this is. None of the videos really overperformed for the channel, but they did perform fairly well, and it's been encouraging on a personal level. So I'm thanking you on a personal level. I can't do this stuff all the time because I don't make any money doing it. I didn't make any money doing this. StuMac helped me out by sending me some materials, some tool stuff. And I guess that would have cost me money because I needed to buy those things. So big thanks to StuMac. What was it, 2 videos ago when I was routing stuff and cutting pick guards, and I have some other stuff in from them to continue my pick guard cutting journey. That's probably going to be the thing that outlasts all of this technique that I was experimenting with. I see myself cutting a lot of pick guards in the future, and StuMac has been helping me gear up for that. So big thanks to them. But yeah, there hasn't, other than making like 15, 20 bucks from ad revenue on each video, which is a terrible return on the hours and hours that it takes to make each one of these videos. There hasn't really been any money coming in from doing this. This has been a passion project for me. This has been something I've been curious about for a long time, and finally felt like I had the moment where it felt right to take a stab at it. So yeah, just big thank yous to everyone who tuned in for this nonsense. I really appreciate it. It did make it worthwhile. You know, I could have done this in private. Most people, if they do this, they'll be doing it in private. Some people might feel nervous to make mistakes in public. and to do destructive things to beautiful guitars that makes other people angry. You know, some people would feel pretty sensitive about that. I enjoy that sort of thing. I love all the trolls that showed up to call me names and, and say that I was doing awful things to this guitar. That's part of the fun for me. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of you are hoping that I do more of this, and I will. Every now and then, I get a wild hair to do some sort of experimental thing, and I waste a bunch of time. And if you like that sort of content, like, subscribe, dislike, leave me rude, nasty comments, support us on Patreon, buy a shirt if you're naked. Stay tuned and stay grounded. Bye, everybody.